How tall are
Okay,
you?
everybody,
Oh,
welcome
sorry.
back. Welcome back to Your Crisis Coach with Scott H. Silverman, myself, Fred Carroll. We do have a guest today, but first we always got to go to Scott first because Scott is so self-indulgent and important and needs to be coddled. His back needs to be patted. So I got to ask him how he's doing and let him tell me. And I just nod like a diligent wife.
Yeah, which I wish I had. So yeah, the nod is nice, Fred. And today, what am I thinking about today? Today, I'm thinking about being here with Saul and you, and I'm sure that we've got some remodeling we're doing. We've been dreaming about for 20 years. We implemented a couple weeks ago, so everything's crazy, and the dogs are going nuts. So the world's kind of crazy on its own. But I'm excited about our time today, and I do what you ask me to do, Fred. I try to. I mean, I've got headphones on. I haven't worn headphones in years, and we've been getting some weird feedback because I have to use Chrome to get onto Riverside because Fred doesn't like doing all the work with Zoom post-production. So, and since he does all the hard work, and I just sit here and try to look
Pretty
younger, which is harder and harder every week.
It's hard when we bring in guests that are obviously young. It doesn't make us, it does not increase our value. I used to say, I usually don't go to Walmart and stuff. But when I feel down, I definitely go to Walmart because I walk out of there feeling like Brad Pitt on a white horse. I just feel so damn good looking, Scott, when I leave. But on my end, Scott, a big announcement is that I left the full-time work industry and I am now in a full-time production mode. So all I do are the YouTube channels, the podcasting, all four podcasts, 4 YouTube channels. I maintain them. I produce them. It's Left Eye Lazy Media. You can see it behind me there. And I'm at not the optimal timing to leave my job, but happy. Oh, does it feel good to be my own boss? Finally. It's the first time, and I was telling my daughter this, Scott, that, 56 years old, just turned 56 last week. And
happy birthday.
Thanks. 56, never took a shot on my dreams because I had children at such a young age and I don't have an education. So all my jobs have always been just work, hustle, overtime. Finally saved enough money to take that. Now it's not forever, but I've got a 1-year shot. I saved enough money to survive 1 full year with money management behind me, basically in a budgeted quarterly system, with the third quarter being judged solely by whether or not I'm profiting or not, making money with my YouTube channels. If I'm not, I have to start looking for work in those 4 months to get back on it. But it feels so good to finally take a shot.
I thought you meant whiskey. That's what I thought you were thinking. Because I know you like to drink out of a straw.
Yeah.
So it was good to hear the transformation. All right, well let's get to something important, Fred, other than
Saul.
You and me.
Give us Saul.
So I found Saul. Welcome, by the way. I found you.
Thank you, guys.
We found you on LinkedIn, and I think what attracted me to your messaging was you talked about. And I want you to talk about it. What had gone on with you and your experience. And I'm a guy in long-term recovery, and my second book's The Opioid Epidemic, so I'm a subject matter expert around that. And I run a treatment center, and I deal with people who suffer from the maladaptive behavior of compulsive, obsessive, addictive behavior, and people who self-medicate. And traditionally, when you talk about self-medication, most people think, well, alcohol, drugs, and I don't know what percent of the addiction consumption world is what, but majority is alcohol and drugs. But they're, between sex and the internet and pornography and of course in your area of, I guess, expertise, we could say, gambling, that I thought it would be kind of neat. We've never actually had someone on who has had that kind of experience and that kind of, embedment, if you will, in their life, where they walk through it. And it sounds like the work that you're doing, a lot of people would benefit from. And I don't know how many people in the world know who you are, but my sense would be if one more person heard it that related to it, you'd be saving another life. So we're going to turn it over to you to tell your story, and then we're going to find ways to enhance it, poke holes in it, question it, push you back.
Sure.
And hopefully by the end of our time together, when this message gets out there, people who want to connect with you, you'll give us your information. They can. I'm assuming you want to help others.
Please.
I got that sense from what you say and what you do and how you wrote it. So welcome to the show, and it's all yours, brother.
Thanks, Scott and Fred. Thank you both. Great to be here virtually. So, as you had mentioned, my experience is in compulsive gambling and now, fortunately, long-term recovery from compulsive gambling. I guess I would say it all goes back to childhood. I mean, I was born in Houston, Texas, 1998, so I'm now 27 years old. I would say, when you have these conversations about addiction and people like to start with childhood and they point to some defining moment in childhood where there was some sort of trauma or something that could directly explain the start of that addictive process. I don't know that I would be able to signal that. I came from, fortunately, a fairly well-off family in Houston. Was able to attend private school, middle school onward. Have my grandparents living across the street. Have a twin brother who I'm very close with. So really, kind of the ideal upbringing. I guess I would say my first real taste of anything sports betting related, which is what eventually became my poison, so to speak, was middle school. And you think, what the hell, like middle school? Who's betting sports in middle school? And I wasn't technically at that point, but maybe you guys do you guys play fantasy football,
I still
baseball?
do.
You still
Yes.
do that sort of stuff? Yeah. I mean, it's right. It's super common. And so that was my first introduction was fantasy baseball. So we had the St. John's Middle School Fantasy Baseball League, and it was a way for all the guys in the league to socialize, become friends. And actually, my mom asked if it was gambling. That was her first question when I said I was going to do this league. And I said, no, we put in $20 to start the season, but that's not we're not gambling. And that was accepted. And I would say, I really would say that the fantasy league was encouraged by my parents because I got to learn more about the game that I loved so much. I really had aspirations of being a sports broadcaster. And the league was really the glue that kept my friendships together. So, long story short, this league was what kept me going middle school, high school. The end of high school, I was introduced to daily fantasy, which I don't know. Do you know anything about like doing a lineup on
Yeah.
DraftKings or one of
I
those
did
things?
it.
Okay, there you go. So Fred knows all about it. So I had a buddy of mine from my fantasy league who introduced me to daily fantasy. And I guess a little bit of important context in all of this is that my passion for sports from a young age, so like, I'm talking about middle school, fantasy baseball, all that, it was really this sort of unbridled passion for the game that, you see guys who are on Instagram telling players to go like jump off a building because they struck out to end the game. It was like,
Yeah.
that sort of passion from a young age, even with, watching the Astros as a kid in Houston. And I was diagnosed ADHD from a very early age. I had some trouble keeping myself disciplined in school, all this sort of stuff. And I say all of that to lay some of the groundwork for why I think that daily fantasy was like a gateway in high school. So senior year of high school. I'm still making sense, right? Am I still being,
Yeah. You're
on
there.
a coherent train of thought here? Okay, perfect. So senior year, I'm introduced to this daily fantasy thing, and I remember early on, I was putting in money, like very small amounts, but putting in money nonetheless on things I had no idea what they were. So I saw on the interface of the app that there was a lineup for MMA fights. And I remember you could put in lineups on esports. So you'd be essentially wagering on guys playing like League of Legends on their computers. And it was very interesting to me. And I thought, well, shoot, the more I put in, the more I have chances to win. And I liked the action that comes with it. I just genuinely enjoyed the rush that came with this quicker paced action. And I know, what's interesting about gambling, and I'll, get on with my story, but as a very quick little tangent here, it's interesting that a lot of people I've talked to who have had problems allude to some early big win as being the catalyst for what really convinced them that they could do this professionally, that they were better than other gamblers. And that senior year of high school, I remember I put in, I want to say it was a quarter. Like you could enter 25 cents on a lineup for some of these contests. And I put in a quarter on a hockey lineup. This was like a global lineup. Anyone could participate across the world. And I got third place that night. Third place out of thousands and thousands of entries. And I won only $35 because my entry buy-in was so low. But it convinced me there, oh, wow, okay, this could happen again. So you see, it's kind of this perfect storm brewing. I felt that gambling gave me, or I guess the early fantasy stuff gave me this sense of purpose. I felt accomplished. I felt like a big shot. I loved sports. I loved the action. I had poor impulse control, ADHD, all that. And this sort of melts together. So how it really took off was college. So that's how I really got into hardcore, real deal sports betting. My sophomore year of college was actually when it happened. I was introduced to a bookie through a friend of mine that I used to do fantasy baseball with. And it was so simple. And that's the thing, Scott, you talk about how prevalent drug use and alcohol is. And you think, I say you, me, when I think of how someone gets started on that, I think of something immediately dangerous, like a party where people are doing like Molly and Coke and all this and drinking a ton. It all seems very scary from the onset. But when I was introduced to gambling from this bookie, or from this kid who had the bookie, it was such a simple ask. It was like, hey, I have this bookie. You want to throw $10 on a baseball game, or, whatever. Not a big deal. And that is where it took off. September of 2017, I put in $10 on a baseball game, and my team was up 9-0 by the second inning. And I had this feeling like this is going to be my thing. Like at that point, I hadn't really had a girlfriend or anything. I mentioned I had a twin brother. My twin brother was now off at Yale, and he was studying all these important things. Basically, it seemed like everyone was kind of moving forward, and I felt like I was sort of stagnating without any real trajectory in my life. And I thought, oh gosh, the way I feel from that gambling win, even if I couldn't really articulate it, it was something I needed to replicate. And that was sort of the hook that drew me in. I'd already done the daily fantasy. I'd already done the, fantasy sports since middle school. This seemed like the natural next step. And so that was how it all got started. Now I can go on, but I wanted to.
Well, I would say that, well, when we go into the, so I have these, I would never consider myself as the addict, but gambling definitely played a role in my life. And obviously, I told you I still do fantasy football. It's like our 25th year in a row with the same group of guys, and
right.
stuff. It's I win enough to satisfy me. It's not my be all end all. It's I'll say it's a $500 league now, but it's literally planned. It's not affecting my budget or anything. There's no cost after that or before that, and it's a bunch of guys that I know. But I see what you were talking about, that big win, thinking you're better because of the luck or a lucky day. So I live in Connecticut, like I told you, and we have the big casinos here. We have Mohegan Sun, we have Foxwoods. They're enormous. And I had to step away recently. I'm only about 6 months now from online gambling because it was all my free time was another $20, because the money is not my problem. But I guess I was missing something. the thrill or whatever. But then you hit for $1,000 and you're like, oh, I can't go into a casino thinking, okay, I hit for $1,000, walk home, go home now. No, $1,000's got to be 10 grand. Today's my lucky day. 10 grand's going to be 50 grand. 50 grand's going to be 100 grand. And I'm sure alcoholism is a role, and that is prevalent with sports gambling also. It's revolved around drinking, drugs, but it is the high and even the low. Thinking even the low becomes an addiction, that feeling of you're such an idiot. Why do you even do that? Well, what are you, stupid? Now you got to work. You better study harder this week on that football lineup because you picked that team. You should have seen that problem. You knew that quarterback wasn't going to play well in that defense. All this stupid shit that your mind goes to. But it's very, very interesting. But yeah, definitely. Scott, you want to add something to that?
Well, I do. I was just Googling here. Approximately 4% of people being treated for substance use disorders also have a gambling addiction. And 1 to 2% who don't have a substance use disorder in the U.S. Have some form of gambling addiction. And I don't see the dates on this stuff, but my guess is this data is probably
pre-legalization.
Well, no, I was going to say pre-COVID because during COVID, whatever the baseline was for mental health issues, substance uses, it escalated in a way that hasn't even been studied yet, because it just, when people had, especially young people, so, we're all of a sudden we're going to school and they had 10, 12 hours a day on the internet, and of course people who are on the dark web, getting precursors to manufacture, synthetic fentanyl at home. We have not seen the outcome of that yet. And then unfortunately, I think it's coming. But, that's why in my opinion, the overdose rate continues to grow. And even though some of the numbers show it dropping, but the substance use and people who are escaping or self-medicating is growing across the country. And for some reason, in America, we've got this fast escalation rate. It's happening globally now like never before, because with the pressure on the cartels, why mess with the DEA? Just swing over to Europe, go down to Australia. It's different in Asia because the consequences are much more severe. But it is scary to see, and that's why we do what we do on this show, is we talk about this. And some people say, well, it's kind of a what's the word, isolated issue where, 15% of the U.S. has some form of an addiction that will erupt over the next year, and only 10% will seek help. So if 90% aren't seeking help, what are they doing? It's either getting worse, because it's not going to go away on its own. It's like, I think of it as a disease that if you don't do something to manage it, it will manage you. And that generally leads to jails, institutions, or death.
Yeah. So continue into your college years. I want to hear some numbers here.
Sure. I mean, I definitely wanted to let you guys chime in too, because these are all valuable perspectives, and
thanks for letting us chime in. So Fred, you gotta really applaud a guy who comes on as a friggin' guest, and he encourages us to come back into the conversation.
Okay,
we don't get this every week, my friend. We really appreciate it.
We got to carry the show halftime.
Young people have no boundaries yet. Good for you. God bless you. I'm so impressed.
Thank you.
I'm going to move in with Sal and his family and see what it's really like to live.
Thanks like so that. Much.
Go ahead.
No, buddy. I mean, I guess really the development of it, of the gambling, was, like I said, September 2017. I had this first won maybe $10 or $12. And, I just recall those early days being almost like some sort of utopia, because I was experiencing some early wins. I remember I went that weekend and bet football, and I took a huge upset. I took the Bears to beat the Steelers back in 2017. I think the Bears quarterback was probably like, Mike Glennon or some like bench warmer.
It was Trubisky, maybe.
Was it Trubisky? Maybe. It was someone that was probably not very memorable, and they somehow won. And I remember exactly where I was, guys. I was sitting in the lounge of my dorm. There was like a computer lab that people used to study during the week, but it was Sunday, so it was empty. But that was like the only time I was there, because I was only there to follow sports. And I remember as soon as game day updated that last touchdown happened and that the Bears won in overtime, I remember I was taking photos of the score and sending it to friends. And then when the bookie paid me through Venmo, I screenshotted that and I put it on my Instagram story. And I think I may have posted it to Snapchat as well. Like, even in this early second bet, that real sports bet that I placed, I was already thinking of how far I could take this. And that was with only like a little $20 win. So, really, I guess I would say the progression of it was those early couple wins justifying to me that I should bet with increasingly more money. So I was starting to bet instead of 10 or 20, it was becoming like 50. And within that first month, the bookie finally made me an online account. And that opened up a whole can of worms. And we can talk more about that in a more general setting of how that's impacting young people all over. But at first, the bookie was just taking my bets. He'd do the bet and then he'd pay me or I'd pay him. I was winning most of the time at the very beginning. But after a few weeks, he said, "Hey, look, I'm busy with school," or whatever. He was some college kid himself. He said, "I'll make you an account and I'll give you a line of credit. And so that way you can place bets whenever you want. You don't have to go through me. And then at the end of the week, we'll square up and, we'll do it that way." And having access to that gave me essentially the key to a universe I didn't even know existed. Because then through that website, I found, oh, I can start betting on tennis. I remember, like, it's crazy what I remember from my experience and what I don't remember. But what I do remember, my sophomore year, I was sitting on the toilet just in my dorm, and I remember seeing this tennis player, Tatiana Maria, some female tennis player, and I saw this is the next game that's on, and I can bet on this because that was like a whole revelation to me, was that it's not just NBA or MLB, there's other stuff out there. And I quickly found out that it wasn't even about the winning and the money. When I was placing these bets on some of these stranger things, it really was just the entire sensation that came with it. And I'll say this too about how it developed. The first few weeks when I was betting, I got some of my roommates to watch some of these games with me, and it was sort of a social activity. Like I said, I was posting it to social media. I had some friends talking about it. And after, I don't have an exact time, but after maybe a month and a half or so, people kind of went on and did their own thing, and the gambling became a very isolating activity. And I actually really enjoyed that aspect of it. And there was a path behind my college. I went to a small school in San Antonio called Trinity. And there was a path behind the San Antonio Zoo where I would walk alone late at night in the dark and just check these scores on my phone, essentially high from the sensation of, oh, what's the next point going to be? What's going to happen? And hopefully you can see through this illustration that it was starting to become not just a little hobby of a $10 bet, but this was something that was starting to manifest itself as like an all-consuming, I need to do this again. I love the feeling. And, it really took off, I guess. The detrimental effects really took off when I had to start lying to my family, because after I had some early wins, I was depositing the money from Venmo into my bank account, and my mom was confused what that was, and she asked me. And when I said it was sports betting, she said, "Well, this is very risky behavior. It's not something you should be doing." Then what I did from there on out was I'd keep money in my Venmo balance so that way if I had to pay the guy, it wouldn't show up through my Wells Fargo. Or if I got paid, I wouldn't transfer it to my bank account so it wouldn't be seen. And so then it was like, okay, now I'm lying about it. Now I'm hiding it. I had a girlfriend in school around that time, and I had to hide it from her as well because she was not a fan of it either. So I guess that was kind of the early stages. I'm trying to think of what's necessary to include or what's just kind of boring filler space. But
Well, I do think that the way you're telling it, I like it because you're showing all the steps. And I know Scott recognizes everything you say relates to drug addiction and alcohol addiction. The addiction is addiction. And that's why we do these shows. but the relation is there. And one of them is legalization of gambling in the apps. Just like with marijuana and stuff like that, they missed the mark understanding the same people that smoke marijuana are the same people that are gamblers, but we still use the bookies, and they don't realize that because the bookie doesn't need my $200 today. He's going to give me the line of credit, and I'll pay him back Friday. Now, you could get into some dicey. I mean, I've been down big money. Now, that's what I'm interested in is where did you get to from a debt standpoint? And then how did you get out of it?
Yeah, well, Fred, I think this is something, and I don't know, I don't recall how much time we have, but I could go on all
It
day. I think
doesn't,
it's,
we're
oh,
fine.
oh, I was just going to say, I think it's a worthy conversation for parents and teachers and everyone to have is about the whole bookie ecosystem that's so accessible with young people and not even needing the money up front to gamble with. But I guess that's a whole other story. I have estimated that the total I was down was between 20 to 25 grand in money that I didn't have that I've been paying back since I last gambled in July of 2019. So that's not the total volume of bets I had placed. I'd placed, much more than that. It's because, I wasn't losing every single time. That was the cumulative total of monies, I guess, that I had owed people. Because the other thing was, it wasn't just one bookie either. And that's how I got further and further into this hole, was that I I feel that I'm a very good strategic networker. And so I used that to my advantage to get more lines of credit. I had my whole strategy of finding new bookies. I would look for people on Facebook that had a fraternity composite photo. And like I would go into people's friends lists that I knew, find guys they were friends with that looked like they were in fraternities, reach out and ask if they had any bookies, or I would go through other people. I had a whole system. And so all of that to say, this was debt that was spread out between 10 or 12 people over these couple of years. And I think the angle I want to take this now, because I know I didn't get into every single detail, and I don't really know that it's necessary for the point of this show. I think that what I would say is being bailed out from these debts made it worse. I know my parents were trying to help when I came clean to them about how much I was down over various time periods if I had some pressure after me. And their solution was to pay it for me and then say, well, now I owe them the money. But they weren't going to enforce it. It really felt like a free get out of jail free card for me. And really, I'd say it wasn't until I was kind of left to fend for myself that I really felt the effects of the consequences. And it's really strange. I'll just say it's super strange to be exiting the gambling world where even in those low moments, I feel this sense of ego. I feel like I'm super powerful. Even when I'm losing, I feel like I'm some victim in like a war, or like Eminem in the 8 Mile movie, or someone important. But to go from that and then face reality and say, hey, you have to go work as a waiter while you're in college to pay some of these debts. And you have to clean up the plates of people who are actually successful. It's just such an uncomfortable thing to accept as someone who's already gambling to escape reality in the first place. And so I think no wonder it's so hard to get away from it, because then you're confronting just all the wreckage and the reality of what your situation is.
So Sal, take a couple minutes and share what you're doing now to, and I believe I read that you are helping others. What does that look like? And what are you doing to, and how does that feel? What does that feel like to be able to, kind of go down that, trudge that
Sure.
road of unhappy destiny. And now you're, you're cleaning people's plates, but you're also, maybe saving someone else's life. Because ultimately, had you gone a different direction and you were really more advanced in the disease, you would, and you may have experienced this, you may have taken your betting and gone from 500 to 5,000 with, chasing, I got to get it back. And then your losses go, and all of a sudden now that 25 turns into $250,000, which is, I'm sure probably thought about it, it wouldn't be that hard to get there very quickly. And before I let you answer that, I've seen a couple of young men, and one of them actually gave that Rolex to Trump. I can't remember his name. You may know who he is, but I saw him and a few of his buddies sitting online playing blackjack and betting $50,000 hands and losing two and a half, three. Obviously they had the cash somewhere to get those lines of credit. But when you lose $2 or $3 million, and then nobody starts that way. Everybody starts, maybe at the penny slots and grows up, but that takes a lot of, just, I don't know if it's courage or fear or just your ego says, I've lost it before. I've won it before. I can get it back. And then when you have that, a couple of them now are really struggling because they, I guess, invested in Bitcoin at the wrong time or the wrong coin, and they're upside down millions. And, the only thing they know how to do to generate income is gamble. And gambling's now has turned on them, if you will. My words, not theirs. So back to you. What are you doing now to inspire others?
Yeah, sure. Well, so my journey in a nutshell, I graduated college in 2020. So like right when COVID was taking place. At that point, I didn't have a job lined up. I actually had been admitted to graduate school to become a licensed professional counselor. This was, 2020. And then I'd done that I guess I was in the program for a few years and right up to the point of practicum. And I feel like my disorganization, some of those tendencies crept in. I was missing some deadlines on some things and ultimately didn't complete that degree. That was the abridged version of that. I didn't get that master's degree. And so I was thinking of what I needed to do or of what I would do professionally from there. By this point, I had already been featured in the media talking about my story with gambling. I had some connections in the recovery community that had gotten me some media time talking about my story. And I had the idea at the end of 2022 to speak at my former high school about my experience, just because I'd seen how prevalent gambling was becoming. And this was just something I did to volunteer. I thought it was worthwhile. And then when I saw that it was a success, I was kind of motivated to become a speaker on gambling because I saw all the speakers on drug use and alcohol in the schools. And so I had someone make me a website. I started to do some early kind of low stakes engagements, built up some momentum. And then when SMU didn't work out for grad school, I had a little bit of traction that I then was able to kind of keep pushing. I got a job working for a limo company while speaking. And now this year I've grown it to where I'm just doing speaking and trainings and things like that full time. But to really answer your question about what I do, I'd say it's sort of multifaceted in the sense that a lot of what I do is speak to students, like high school students, college students, and I share my story, but I like to say it's in a strategic way where I'm not trying to be sensationalist or put so much fear into them. It's really about educating them on the potential risks, giving them a really full, comprehensive understanding of the gambling landscape and helping them to make more informed decisions for themselves. And that's been really successful, especially as a lot of high schools are seeing this becoming a problem. Given a lot of presentations at conferences to counselors, to teachers, to parents, had the privilege of going to groups like the Navajo Nation who are noticing an increase in gambling problems in their tribal community. So I've really tried to take my personal experience and then also gain an understanding of what's going on around me, taking in examples from pop culture, from, keep up with what's going on with states legalizing and things like that, so that I'm not the one trick pony who just has the one story, but I can kind of evolve and adapt and make different talks that are based on different things that I observe. So I'd say that's where I am now.
Yeah, what's amazing is, and to Scott's points too, is how mathematical a gambler's mind becomes. You all of a sudden you're a math whiz. I used to, and this is a year ago, maybe 2 years since I've done this, but this is how sickening it gets. And I still love sports. I still watch sports, and now I enjoy it from a non-gambling standpoint, but I still love my sports. And I used to rank through the week to find the NFL games. So at 1 o'clock, I would have a 1, 2, and 3 level, and I would put 750 on my top game, 500 on my second game, 250 on my third game, with the mathematical figuration that if you hit the first one, the next two are paid for. Even if you lose, you break even. Now, if you hit two of those, if you hit the back two, it pays for the first loss. If you hit two of them, that's the mathematics. And I'm not even that bright or anything. But what I wanted to bring up with you was I'm always impressed, or maybe that's not the right word, but just the scientific nature of things. With you being a twin and the mental, like you said, you're watching your brother go to Yale. And obviously, I live in Yale's backyard. And he's as close chromosome to you as possible. How different did he have any of these addictions at all, whether sports or others?
That's a really good question, and the answer to that is he is not. I don't know that he's ever gambled. I mean, I can't recall a time where he's told me or I've seen that he's purchased a lottery ticket, made a sports bet. I think he'll have a drink every now and again, but the way a normal person would at like a dinner reception or something. He's about as straight edge, clean cut guy as you could picture. He's very, very smart guy. I mean, he's very hardworking. And I know in childhood, there were times where my parents would put some scratch off tickets in like a birthday card, which they then stopped doing when they saw that I really liked it so much. But they did it a few times. And I remember I would scratch all the tickets till the surfaces were smooth and I was one number away and I loved it. And I'd watch Gabe scratch, my twin, I'd watch him scratch the tickets and he was like, okay, I won $1. Or, if he lost, whatever. He had no interest in it. And so even from that young age, I'd say we were very different in that aspect. But he definitely suffered too, along with my parents, as this gambling beast really progressed in me because I was so dishonest and hiding, and I'd come back for Christmas break and my mom said I looked completely off, that I was hiding things. I was very nervous, very on edge. And I know that he definitely suffered too from how deep it had gotten. And I'm just fortunate. I know I didn't really kind of wrap up the story, but I know that it just took me getting to really a point that I couldn't even tolerate, that motivated me either to maybe kill myself or actually try something different. And it's what I think is the unfortunate reality of addiction, is that it takes such lengths for some people to try something different.
Well, it's addiction in all things. It ruins everything. There's no positive that comes out of your addiction. It just doesn't work. And it doesn't matter if it's alcohol, fentanyl, marijuana, cigarettes, all these things either take your life, cause health issues. The mental side of gambling is insane because it's a different high. It's a higher high. It's acceptable. It is cigarettes in that sense. If you were doing meth, you probably would have been taken care of a lot quicker because it's recognizable. But you're gambling on, it's just, he likes to throw a few shekels down on sports every now and then, It's not a big deal. You're lucky that you're your age because you're not dealing with guys that'll break your legs for the money. You didn't deal with that because one thing bookies have figured out, just like drug lords down in Mexico have figured out, is the biggest punishment you could give a gambler is to cut him off from gambling.
Mm-hmm.
And
Totally.
That's why you seek the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. But eventually it comes back and it bites you right in the ass, and you have to put your tail between your legs and figure out a path because the money does not return. It never does. So, Scott, what do you got there before we wrap up?
I'm trying to think, and forgive me, but have you written a book?
No,
yet?
I haven't. No. Should
that's
I?
on your radar, I assume.
people have brought it up. I just am wondering what the angle would be, or what,
Well, you have my contact info. Let's talk about it, because I think, from my personal experience, I'm just finishing my third book, and Fred's, I don't know, he's written like 27.
Geez.
But
Wow.
he's different. He doesn't think he has
It's
problems. So
17, Scott.
17.
17.
I got the 7. But it's a cleansing, and also it's a way to leverage your intellectual property for more people to access what you do. I mean, YouTube's another way, TikTok's another way, Instagram's another way, but having that book helps kind of memorialize it.
Oh, I
And
agree.
I think you would, you'd find it healthful to put that somewhere, getting it out of your head and your heart and putting it in print. Just my
I think
suggestion.
what he's trying to say is,
What am I trying to say, Fred?
we don't write books not to make money. And if you have something that you could monetize while you're also doing good things,
Sure.
there's always a benefit to that.
That's not what I was saying.
Oh.
I was saying not at all, Fred.
Well, you need something.
Thank you for that.
You need something that's sellable. It's all about marketing.
Ever since you've been out of work, Fred, I'm starting to enjoy you even more. So what I'm saying is healthful, not helpful, healthful.
Oh.
That for you personally, the journey of, giving back and sharing your experience. And the thinking is, maybe someone else may not have to travel that road as far. Because, it takes what it takes for people. But when I think about addiction, I think about a disease. And when I think about a disease, I liken it, to diabetes. You don't wake up one morning and say, Mom, Dad, right after you change my diaper, could you give me a dose of diabetes? You either have it or you don't have it. It's just one of those things. You may get it, your brother may not. So I like to encourage people to realize it's not your fault. But if you're able to kind of look within, and the problem with looking within is most of us who suffer from a disease of addiction suffer from denial and the inability to feel feelings. Therefore, when we go through this process, it's not usually, well, here's an example. 95% of the phone calls I get about a family with a problem, and I'm an interventionist and an family navigator, it's not the person with the problem calling me, it's someone from the family.
I figured as much. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're witnessing it and they're powerless, but they keep trying to love them to wellness, and it takes a special skill. And when families ask me, what do? I said, look, if your son or daughter broke their leg, would you go on YouTube on how to fix a broken leg, or would you take them to the emergency department, and have a professional, take x-rays, do an assessment, and implement the most appropriate, modality of help that they can to make sure that your loved one gets the support that they need, meaning help fix it. And that's why, in my opinion, it takes so long for many people to, hit that wall, so to speak. But we're seeing, and then I'm going to close with this, Fred, we're seeing the medium age now for substance use disorder entry in the low teens. And that has just shifted in the last 10 years. So if a family kid has, mom, dad drank, older brother, marijuana, they may opt for gambling thinking, well, I'm not going to do what they did. But if they're predisposed, that gambling can lead to other things. And poly drug, can include a variety of other things. And online porn has skyrocketed. And that's a whole nother multi-billion-dollar industry. And there's studies being done now about what's impacted people when they were home alone with COVID. And that addiction in its own right, you're doing your own home, but it's one thing. But when you're acting out on it, or you're isolating and you don't know how to maturely have a relationship with another person, the long-term impact of that is going to be an underlying trauma going untreated that's going to manifest itself in a very uncomfortable way. And it's hard to say that to people and go, you can go on a nice trip, or, you can go to rehab, or it doesn't work that way.
Before we wrap up, Scott, and you get to ask your magic question, I'll ask mine first, and I'll go with, so first of all, any way anybody could contact you and connect with you, but I want to know, beyond the addiction and the recovery and stuff, and congratulations on it.
Oh, thanks.
But where's your life at, and what do you do for fun now? What is your enjoyment?
Yeah, it's a valid question. I still I like playing basketball. I like also something I've taken up a lot is just walking around because I'll do that to send emails and I'll listen to music. So I do a lot of walking, especially on trails and things. There's a lot here in Nashville. Spend a lot of time. I have a girlfriend now, not the same one that was at Trinity, but been in a long-term relationship here. So say that that's a lot of what I do when I have some open time, but I've been traveling a lot lately too. And that's with the speaking stuff, but I find that I enjoy that as well as just traveling, even just like road trips, that sort of thing. And
It's amazing when you got some money in your pocket,
that's
what
true.
you can
You
afford
do
to
stuff.
do.
Yeah, that's right. But people sometimes ask if I still keep up with sports, and I keep up with the Houston sports teams pretty closely still. I'm still a Houston sports fan, but say I follow it in a different way where I don't care about what each guy is doing or about
Right.
the specific
And it does
run
change with
total.
your age. As I gotten older, I'm a big Red Sox fan, big Patriot guy. I don't it doesn't affect my life like it used
Right,
to. It used
right.
to change my
Yeah.
life. I used to wake up Monday morning in a good mood or a bad mood based off of what the Patriots did. Now I realize it's just a game, only because as you age and you get older, you realize there's much more important things in the world and things that are out of your control that you
That,
just can't control. And they're human beings. A lot of these guys don't get treated as human beings, and gamblers don't like to treat them. And you opened with that, how we'll threaten a guy's life over a strikeout and stuff. So, okay, Scott. So why don't you get into your magic question that I love so much?
Yeah,
I'm worried.
he's
I'm scared of this.
the question is there something that we haven't asked you that we should?
Oh, I'm thinking something that you've asked me, or you
No,
have
that we
not
have
asked
not.
me.
That we
You've
have
not
not.
asked me that you
Yeah,
should.
something you want to share that you didn't get a chance to, and you think
I
are.
guess I sort of left out some of the resolution. I mean, for me, I guess what I would bring up is that, like you had mentioned, family members are often the ones to seek the help first. I know my first introduction to recovery, to Gamblers Anonymous, was the start of my junior year of college, which was just about a year after I'd started really sports betting. And so I think that would be some context for the listener, is that that's my initial introduction to any sort of recovery. And so when I finally felt like I'd bottomed out, so to speak, I knew where to go. I knew where to turn to. And I had been attending meetings off and on really that whole year that I was still gambling. As I would go to the meeting, it wouldn't really stick for me. But I think that's important for people to realize, is that for some people, maybe it's that seed that was planted when they first went to some sort of meeting or first sought treatment, and then it really stuck with them a year or two later.
Yeah, that's very good. Is
Awesome.
Gamblers Anonymous what you would recommend? I
That's
put
what I
as
still go to. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll put the links in the show notes and they'll be on the screen here during the video. Can I link your LinkedIn to
Oh,
people so they
sure.
could reach
Thanks.
out to you? And
Yeah.
we'll put that on there.
What
Thanks.
about his website, Fred?
Yeah, you can throw my
Yeah,
site there
yeah.
too. Scott, you have so many LinkedIn followers.
I know he's a popular guy. Listen, that's
It's
why we've been together 6 years doing this now. So
well, yeah,
you
but
know,
I started doing it. You can look at me and you know that I'm probably old enough to be your great grandfather, but I started early on, and I've been at this for people always they poke me and they go, oh, can you make an introduction? I said, to who? And I go on, I go, I'm sorry, I actually just somebody I went to a friend, because back in the day you could do, I don't know, a couple hundred at a time. Now they kind of
Oh,
strategically.
I was gonna
So
say I don't know how you even did that, to be
yeah.
honest.
it's
Well,
lovely, and
listen,
it's
he's
good for your
downplaying it.
brand. It's good for your
He,
brand, and it's good for your platform. And my new book. I didn't tell you what it is. I think you'll get a kick out of it. I'll give you the title, then we'll wrap
Sure.
up. It's called "You're Not God. That Job is Taken."
Ah, that's true too, though. That is, I like that because it's
that's his
true.
go-to.
Yeah.
All his titles. He's got great titles of his books with um, the opioid epidemic, right?
Right.
Was your second book, and then Dare Me to Say No, or what is it called?
Tell me no, I dare you.
Tell Me No, I
Hmm,
Dare You.
I like
Yeah.
that.
There's a reason for all tongue in cheek, and it's all nonfiction, my stories, other people's stories, and real stuff.
And I'll include the links to Scott's books on there too.
You
Well,
should.
that would be nice, and I'll send my $25.
Yeah, everybody will get links, and maybe we'll sell some books.
Everybody will get linked. There we go. Sure beats the alternative.
I was going to say before I forgot, Fred, you kind of look like Derek Jeter a little bit.
Who, me?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh my God! You know how much I hate the Yankees?
Oh,
listen, that is the rudest thing I've ever heard. the go-to. Maybe it's because I don't work now and I'm outside tanning at the pool, so I'm tanning a little. Oh, let me tell you real quick, why I hate the Yankees. Because everybody always asks me why I hate the Yankees. 1978, 8 years old. My little league baseball team goes to Yankee Stadium. This is the Reggie Jackson era and everything. I don't have a team at that time. My father wasn't a sports guy. My mother gives me $20. I buy a helmet. It's a Minnesota Twins helmet because it's purple, has pinks, whites, all the colors. I'm cheering like a little boy at a baseball game. The guy behind me poured his beer in the helmet and dyed his cigar out in it. So I went home that night and researched, who do the Yankee fans hate the most? They said the Red Sox, and I'm a diehard Red Sox fan today.
That is such a fascinating story, actually.
I'm fascinating, Scott. Fascinating.
With those 27 books, there's no doubt about it.
Listen, there's also one more thing. I named my son after Wade Boggs. He's
really?
He's 32 years old, my son. I named my son after Wade Boggs. But a year later, Wade Boggs went to the Yankees. I had my son's name legally changed because no kid of mine will ever be named after a Yankee player. And today his name is Anthony.
I can't tell if you're joking or not.
I am not.
Oh.
Not joking. His name is Anthony Wade Scott. I put the Scott in there because Scott Cooper took over at third base for Wade Boggs on the Red Sox. And that's my story. And that is the end of the show. This is your crisis coach. That's Scott H. Silverman. I'm Fred. That's Saul. We'll have all the links in there. Make sure you're watching. Make sure you're sharing. And if nobody has told you they love you, we love you. And we will see you again next week.